Welcome back to the Torque Test channel. This is episode 2. Today we're going to be comparing our standard on this channel, which is the Ingersoll Rand US-made 231H, to the model that effectively replaced it, the Chinese-made 231C, or Classic, except in this case it's more like New Coke, and the 231H is the Coca-Cola Classic. At a glance you can tell the difference between these two tools because the 231C has the front exhaust and the 231H has the handle exhaust. Besides that, they're near identical. Their weight, length, size, and weight of their hammer cage and anvil are pretty much the same. Their hammers are slightly different design, but most of the internals are pretty much interchangeable. While a version of the 231H exists today in the 231HA, for the most part the 231C took over for the 231H as IR's main thundergun once they switched from assembled in the USA, which maybe was already China parts, to made in China. Early versions of the 231C, like this one, had a label added on to the outside to show this, while later models of the 231C had it printed on the nameplate. When this tool was purchased, its torque figures were advertised as 350 working torque and 600 max torque. That's when this tool is purchased. Nowadays, if you buy a 231C, I think it's 425 working torque, but that's what we're going to compare to as its specs at the time, just like we did for the 231H. And just as we did with the other gun, we're going to take it apart and make sure it's in good working order and see if any parts need to be replaced. This is the first test, which is forward working torque on the US H model. If you're not familiar with how this machine works or the process, I would recommend going back to the first video. Then we'll do the same for the C model from China. Then we have max reverse torque. Exactly. So you may be thinking, well, of course the C model made more torque. It has higher advertised numbers. Well, you have to remember at the time, people went from a H model that, to their knowledge, was made in the USA to this new C model that had a made in China sticker on it. And they were essentially the same size and weight and had interchangeable parts. But the new model had higher advertised numbers, and people were questioning this. Today they still question this. So essentially there was a lot of skepticism as to if this new model made as much or more power than the previous. Before the third and final test, let's look at some of the data from the gauge. The blue graph is the US H model and the red is the C model. You can see in both cases, even in forward, the 231C tops all of the H model's curves. For the H model, forward and reverse torque seem to climb at roughly the similar rate, whereas the C model favors reverse across the board. However, so far the 231H mostly meets its marketing figures of 450-300, yet while the C hits its working torque claim of 350 pretty much spot on at 345. So far its max torque figure reading here at 500 doesn't quite hit the 600 foot-pounds figure on the box. So let's see if this best case scenario test does. So I was pretty impressed by this. I'm not sure if I didn't expect it to ever hit 600, but while it may not be hitting its mark within 10 seconds like the H model did in the max torque test, it put up its max numbers without a lot of fuss. The curves on both tools are flattening out a little bit more than previous tests, but they seem like they would continue to climb given an endless run time. While both tools seem to generate their advertised figures, even if one required more pressure and time, we're still dealing with some traditional advertised torque figures that you might read here. No nut busting or peak torque or bolt breakaway yet. So we'll get into that in our next video. I think this will compare pretty decently to some of the heaviest modern hitters in the impact game. Maybe we'll see how creative modern ratings have gotten compared to older ones. Subscribe and find out.